the object, if it's technological, it would maneuver, or it would release some mini probes, and or it will broadcast some signal, or it will have some artificial lights coming off it, not just reflection of sunlight.
An amateur astronomer in Chile was just doing his regular night observations when something absolutely insane happened that's got scientists around the world completely losing their minds. He was tracking this weird green visitor from another star system called 3I Atlas when suddenly, out of nowhere, 9 mysterious objects just appeared around it in perfect formation. But here's the crazy part. Each one is generating 20 times more power than our biggest nuclear plants, which should be physically impossible. Then, another massive visitor showed up from the opposite direction, and now governments are secretly preparing for something they won't talk about publicly. Are we witnessing alien technology in action? Is this the moment everything changes for humanity? The night everything changed. Leslie Peltier never expected to discover something that would shake the entire scientific world. This amateur astronomer from northern Chile had been tracking the interstellar object called 3I Atlas for weeks, using his 40-inch research-grade telescope. The setup was impressive for an amateur, complete with a cryogenically cooled CAMOS camera and high-precision tracking system tied directly into NASA's ephemeris data. For the longest time, 3I Atlas looked just like what everyone thought it was, a fast-moving visitor from deep space with a beautiful green tail glowing from carbon monoxide and nickel emissions. The object had been discovered only a week before Peltier started his observations, making it the third confirmed interstellar visitor after the famous Oumuamua and 2E Borisov. Unlike those previous visitors, 3I Atlas had something special about it. The green glow was more intense than anything astronomers had seen before, creating an emerald streak across the night sky that amateur photographers around the world were capturing in stunning detail. Peltier had been following standard protocol, taking images every few hours and uploading the data to various astronomer forums, where both professionals and hobbyists shared their findings. The routine was comfortable and predictable. Point the telescope, track the object, capture the images, process the data, and share the results. Nothing about those first few weeks suggested that 3I Atlas was anything more than an unusually bright comet from another star system. The telescope setup itself was a marvel of amateur astronomy. The cryogenic cooling system kept the camera sensor at extremely low temperatures to reduce electronic noise, while the tracking rig could follow objects moving at incredible speeds across the sky with pinpoint accuracy. This level of precision was exactly what made Peltier's discovery so significant and so undeniable. When 9 became 10, September 19th changed everything in ways that still give scientists nightmares. At exactly 2 in the morning UTC, Peltier was conducting his routine imaging session when something appeared on his screen that made him freeze completely. Around the main emerald streak of 3I Atlas, 9 smaller points of light had appeared, dim but absolutely distinct, moving in perfect lockstep with the main body. The image looked like fireflies dancing around a bright lantern, except these fireflies were moving through the vacuum of space at tremendous speeds. Peltier immediately double-checked his equipment, thinking there might be some kind of malfunction or interference. The camera was working perfectly. The tracking system was locked on target, and the atmospheric conditions were ideal for observation. He quickly captured several more frames to confirm what he was seeing, then posted the images online to the major astronomy forums. The initial reaction from professional astronomers was predictable skepticism. Many dismissed the additional points as cosmic ray hits, sensor noise, or processing artifacts. After all, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the idea that an interstellar object had suddenly spawned 9 companions was beyond extraordinary. However, within 48 hours, the situation changed dramatically. The James Webb Space Telescope, Hubble, the Very Large Telescope in Chile, and the Keck Observatory in Hawaii all confirmed exactly what Peltier had observed. These are instruments designed to detect the faintest galaxies at the edge of the observable universe. with sensitivity levels that can pick up individual photons from cosmic sources billions of light years away. When instruments of this caliber all report the same phenomenon, the scientific community takes notice immediately. The confirmation process was thorough and methodical. Each observatory used different filters, exposure times, and analysis techniques to ensure that what they were seeing was real and not some kind of systematic error. The results were consistent across all platforms and all observation methods. 3I Atlas now had 9 companions, each following identical trajectories at identical speeds. Physics that should not exist. The spectroscopic analysis of these 9 new objects revealed something that made astrophysicists around the world deeply uncomfortable. Every single companion shared the exact same speed, trajectory, and spectral signature as 3I Atlas itself, confirming beyond doubt that they all originated from the same interstellar source. However, the energy readings were completely impossible according to everything we know about physics. While 3I Atlas had already puzzled scientists with an estimated 10 gigawatt power source inferred from its thermal profile and tail behavior, each of the 9 companions appeared to be generating 20 gigawatts of power. This figure defies every known law of physics when you consider the size constraints involved. The companion objects were estimated to be roughly 1/10 the size of 3I Atlas, yet they were producing twice as much energy. To put this in perspective, our largest nuclear power plants on Earth weigh thousands of tons and produce only a few gigawatts of electricity. These space objects are no larger than a city block, yet each one is radiating enough power to supply entire nations. The power-to-mass ratio is so extreme that it should be physically impossible to achieve with any known technology or natural process. When astrophysicists at Caltech and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology tried to create computer models to explain these energy levels, their supercomputers repeatedly crashed. No matter how they adjusted the parameters for temperature, pressure, or plasma density, the equations refused to converge on any stable solution. The mathematics simply would not work with conventional physics. Even exotic theories involving antimatter reactions or dark matter catalysis could not account for such incredible energy density in such small packages. A fusion reaction powerful enough to generate 20 gigawatts would require containment pressures and magnetic fields that would crush any material we know of. The fuel requirements alone would exceed the apparent mass of these objects by several orders of magnitude, faster than human perception. The mystery deepened when astronomers tried to figure out exactly when and how these 9 companions had appeared. According to detailed analysis by Avi Loeb's team at Harvard University, the 9 objects materialized at precisely 2 in the morning UTC on September 19th, and the entire event took place in just 0.1 milliseconds. This time frame is almost incomprehensible from a human perspective. A typical human eye blink lasts about 300 milliseconds, while a camera flash takes approximately 5 milliseconds. The appearance of these 9 objects happened 30,000 times faster than an eye blink and 50 times faster than a camera flash. This incredible speed explains why none of the dozens of telescopes and spacecraft monitoring 3I Atlas managed to capture the actual moment of appearance. The speed becomes even more remarkable when you consider that observatories around the world had been watching 3I Atlas continuously for months. NASA's Juno spacecraft near Jupiter, the Parker Solar Probe flying close to the Sun, and the Bepi-Colombo mission heading to Mercury were all collecting data from different vantage points throughout the solar system. Amateur astronomers on every continent were tracking the object's progress with increasingly sophisticated equipment. Yet despite this unprecedented level of surveillance, nobody saw even the slightest hint that 9 additional objects were about to appear. There were no precursor events, no gradual brightening, no debris clouds, and no changes in the main object's behavior. The companions simply materialized instantly at full power and brightness, as if someone had flipped a cosmic light switch. In the context of deep space physics, however, such rapid events are not entirely unknown. Gamma-ray bursts can release more energy in a few milliseconds than every star in our galaxy produces combined. Cosmic rays accelerate to nearly the speed of light in fractions of a second. Even massive black holes can merge and disappear in less than 1,000th of a second, sending gravitational waves rippling across the universe. The great debate begins. The scientific community split into competing camps, trying to explain what had happened to 3EI Atlas and its mysterious companions. Avi Loeb immediately proposed what became known as the mothership hypothesis. According to this theory, 3I Atlas was actually a large interstellar craft that had been designed to shed smaller probes as it approached its target, which in this case appeared to be our solar system. Loeb pointed out several disturbing facts that supported his theory. The 9 probes appeared only after 3I Atlas had entered the inner solar system and was approaching the Sun. Their power cores were significantly denser and more energetic than the main craft, suggesting they were designed for specific close-approach missions. The perfect synchronization of their appearance and movement patterns indicated a level of coordination that seemed impossible for natural fragments. In interviews and scientific papers, Loeb argued that if these were indeed artificial probes, they were likely conducting detailed reconnaissance of our solar system. Their advanced power systems would allow them to operate sophisticated sensing equipment and maintain communication with the main craft across interstellar distances. The timing of their deployment suggested they were following a predetermined mission profile. However, other prominent scientists offered more conventional explanations. Michio Kaku suggested that 3I Atlas might be an unusually dense comet-like object that had collided with a massive piece of interstellar debris. Since 3I Atlas was moving at over 60 kilometers per second, any collision would release enormous amounts of kinetic energy that could shatter it into multiple high-speed fragments. In this collision scenario, the 9 smaller objects would be super-dense chunks of the original body that had absorbed much of the impact energy. This absorbed energy could theoretically account for their high-power signatures and synchronized movement patterns. The identical spectral signatures would make sense because all the fragments came from the same parent object. Loeb responded that collision fragments would not behave like miniature nuclear reactors, generating steady 20-gigawatt power outputs for extended periods. Natural rock formations, no matter how exotic their composition, simply do not produce sustained energy emissions at these levels. Additionally, collision fragments would gradually separate and disperse over time, rather than maintaining perfect formation flying. The second visitor arrives. Just as the scientific community was struggling to understand 3I Atlas and its companions, astronomical surveys detected another interstellar object approaching from the opposite direction. This new visitor, designated C2025 R2 Swan, was more than 100 times larger and more luminous than 3I Atlas, with a spectacular tail spanning 2.5 degrees across the night sky. C2025 R2 Swan dwarfed every comet in recorded history, including the famous Hale-Bopp and Halley's Comet. Its approach trajectory would bring it to perihelion, the closest point to the Sun, during the exact same week that 3I Atlas was making its closest approach. This created what astronomers called an interstellar traffic jam, with 2 massive objects from different parts of the galaxy converging on our solar system simultaneously. The timing seemed too perfect to be coincidental, leading to wild speculation about the relationship between these 2 visitors. Some researchers suggested that C2025 R2 Swan might be responding to 3I Atlas, either as a rescue mission or as some kind of cosmic interceptor. Others theorized that both objects were part of a coordinated operation, with different roles in whatever plan was unfolding. Historical analysis of C-2025 R2 Swan's trajectory revealed something even more intriguing. Orbital mechanics calculations showed that an object following a similar path had passed through the inner solar system approximately every 1,200 years throughout recorded history. Ancient astronomical records from various civilizations seem to support this pattern, describing periodic appearances of spectacular celestial visitors. Chinese imperial archives from around 200 years before the Common Era mentioned a heavenly dragon with a magnificent tail. Babylonian cuneiform tablets described a splitting star that heralded great upheavals in earthly kingdoms. Medieval European chronicles from around the year 1000 recorded a green visitor with a tail like a banner that remained visible for months. If this 2200-year cycle was accurate, then C-2025 R2 Swan was not just a random visitor, but a regular traveler that had been observed by human civilizations throughout history. This raised profound questions about what it might be and why it followed such a precise schedule. Ancient mysteries and modern fears. The historical pattern of C-2025 R2 Swan visits corresponded with significant periods of change and upheaval in human civilization, though whether this was coincidence or causation remained hotly debated. Each recorded appearance seemed to coincide with major transitions in technology, politics, or social organization, leading some researchers to speculate about possible connections. The most recent calculated appearance would have occurred around 800 years ago, during the height of the medieval period in Europe and the golden age of various Islamic civilizations. Historical records from this time period describe unusual astronomical phenomena and significant technological advances that followed shortly afterward. However, establishing direct causation between celestial events and human progress remains scientifically problematic. Archaeological evidence suggested that ancient civilizations had been far more aware of astronomical cycles than previously thought. Structures like Stonehenge, the Mayan pyramids, and various temple complexes around the world incorporated precise astronomical alignments that tracked celestial events over thousands of years. These monuments may have been designed partly to predict and prepare for the return of objects like C-2025 R2 Swan. Modern analysis of these ancient sites revealed sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics and long-term astronomical cycle. The builders clearly possessed detailed knowledge about celestial visitors that returned on predictable schedules, suggesting they had been observing and recording these events for much longer than conventional history indicates. The implications were staggering if these connections proved valid. It would mean that advanced interstellar objects had been influencing human development for thousands of years, either through direct intervention or simply by inspiring technological advancement during their periodic appearances. The current simultaneous arrival of both 3I Atlas and C-2025 R2 Swan suggested that we might be witnessing the most significant of these cyclical events. Global preparations and silent mobilization. Despite the mounting evidence and growing public fascination with both interstellar visitors, official government agencies maintained an almost complete media blackout. NASA and the European Space Agency issued only brief statements acknowledging ongoing observations while repeatedly emphasizing that there was no evidence of any threat to Earth or human civilization. However, leaked documents and insider reports painted a very different picture of frantic, behind-the-scenes activity. The Pentagon and European Space Command had reportedly begun emergency briefings covering scenarios ranging from peaceful contact to planetary defense operations. Contingency plans were being developed for everything from communication attempts to direct interception missions. China's National Space Administration had quietly repurposed its heavy-lift Long March 9 rocket program to develop high-velocity interceptor capabilities. The European Space Agency was reportedly dusting off blueprints from its cancelled Don Quixote asteroid deflection mission, adapting the technology for potential interstellar target engagement. Even private aerospace companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin were being approached about rapid launch platforms for reconnaissance probes. The silence from official sources was feeding widespread paranoia and conspiracy theories. If the scientific evidence was as compelling as it appeared, why were world governments not preparing the public for potential contact with non-human intelligence? Some observers suggested that quiet mobilization was already underway, with spacecraft being retested, defense satellites brought online, and radio telescopes moved to higher alert levels. Avi Loeb had formally petitioned the United Nations to convene an emergency session specifically focused on interstellar object policy and planetary preparedness. He advocated for creation of a global task force with representatives from all major spacefaring nations and openly suggested that Earth's nuclear powers should coordinate their response capabilities, not for attack purposes, but to demonstrate human technological sophistication. The timeline for any meaningful response was rapidly shrinking as both objects approached their closest points to the Sun and Earth during the month of October. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.